I'm a photographer, I'm a storyteller, reflecting what I see around me through the images I capture. To reflect what I see and experience, describing the community around me, my mindset, my imaginations, what influences me in narrating my story. I was born here in Sri Lanka, my Ceylon, and been away a long time, immersed in another world, in a contrasting culture, in an ancient southern land, Australia. Now I search for my origins through the art of the country of my birth. Art is the way we tell our stories, stories of our experiences, stories of our lives, describing the way we live, learning how we ought to live, shaping our lives, building our hopes, attaching our fears, and forming our minds. In the early 70s, as a young student in Australia, I discovered the work of Lionel Wendt. Born in 1900, he was a pioneer Sri Lankan artist-photographer. His work, a book a neighbour showed me in Canberra, was a turning point for me. Inspired by this chance discovery, I too became a photographer. An art form I still practice, an art form that still consumes me. For Lionel Wendt, an accomplished pianist and trained in the law, photography was his childhood hobby, as it was mine. It became his principal occupation, as it also became mine. His images in black and white of life and impressions of Ceylon in dynamic compositions, detailed in tonal shapes and forms, of everyday life, of ordinary people, everyday events with serious purpose, in glorious dignity and beauty, a way that I too have tried to look at the world. His forms and shapes, his play of light and dark, creating a tension between the factual and the sensual, telling my own story and reflecting my own lived experience. In a cold wintry Canberra, a 20-year-old and ready for life, Wendt's images and his world moved me and brought me a flood of memories growing up in Sri Lanka. These images continue to rise up in me throughout the long years of my absence from this land, in the hope that one day I could return and walk in Wendt's footsteps, rediscovering the images of my childhood. This one day didn't come for many years. War and conflict in Sri Lanka and life in my new adopted country kept me away. The years turned to decades until I finally returned to a country still at war with itself and its own people. Recently, in search of Lionel Wend's work in Colombo, I discovered the Sapumal Foundation. The home of the 43 group artists' work and Wend's hand in the formation of Sri Lanka's first homegrown art collective. This house is home of artist Harry Peris, left in trust for perpetuity, to exhibit and maintain the collective work of the 43 group, a time capsule from a bygone era. The images the 43 group produced, although different in every way, draws me to my childhood impressions of Sri Lanka and growing up there in several places in the island. Wend's photographs of the toddy tapper, forlorn window, silver shadows, floods aftermath, images etched in my memory of holidays in my grandfather's village, Jayala. Gabriel's religious paintings in Catholic churches, ploughing the paddy fields and the village life, the animals and humans working together towards a simpler life that I could easily relate to as a child all those years ago. The extraordinary images of Delaneyagala's imaginations, influenced by Picasso, Matisse and Braque, the experience of misery in color and brushstrokes, achieving heights of religious and aesthetic exaltation. The geometric poetry of Keat, Buddhist Jataka stories, a new Buddhist artistic vocabulary, influenced by the European Cubists and Indian traditions, experiments in perspective. The colors, shapes and forms of Ivan Peris, pure painterly meditations on the painter's indigenous experiences, the mastery of his vision and materials. Harry Peris's Faces from Another Time speaks to me of the familiar, influenced by Matisse and Tagore's Shantiniketan, the generous patron and teacher of generations of artists in Sri Lanka. These artists' work evoking memories of a different life, reflections of another time and place, of a time and place long gone, yet as if it was yesterday. These memories have sustained me all these years, images of places I want to revisit, to make them part of my experience, to make them part of my life, replicated in my own work. The people, the places, the temples, villages and cities, leaving aside the differences that has developed in the past years, to experience the soul of the country, the soul of the society as I remembered it. The artist of the 43 group, like I have tried to do, reflected a Sri Lankan aesthetic, encaged in a Western notion of art production, using a universal language of art to communicate their story, a language that not only speaks to Sri Lanka, but also to the world. Abandoning a historical lineage of religious art practice and embracing European modernist techniques, helping to evolve Sri Lankan art into a modern era. The original members of the 43 group are long gone now and forgotten. Few remember this young group of Ceylonese in the dramatic ensuing years and periods of unprecedented social struggle. Few remember those who stood up to the dominant powers, changing the way they saw and reflected their own life, telling their own stories to the world with pride and dignity. Few remember the boldness with which they spruiked Sri Lankan art on the international stage, in London, Paris, Venice and Sao Paulo, to critical acclaim, a new force in Southeast Asian art, they said. The harmony and respect they promoted among the artists of Sri Lanka, with encouragement and without bias, the standards they set as examples for others to follow. I didn't know Lionel, Harry, George, Justin and Ivan, and the group they were part of. As it was for others of my generation, they were before our time. Yet I feel a certain kinship to this group, my life somehow entangled with theirs, helping me to understand my birth culture, completing my artistic journey back to where my life began. Their images evoke a sense of loss in me, tears for what I left behind, the land and its people, and not being there in times of pain and suffering. Nevertheless, the group and their images keep alive a time of innocence, a time of eternal joy and happiness, it seems, where my dreams began. Dreams of the skies of my native land, where I first looked at life, light, color, shape and form, where my childhood memories lie.